All right. So, as we are being ushered into the new year, we thought that it would only be right to list our top 10 most anticipated movies of 2024. Now, you may notice this list is a little bit longer than normal, and that's because, of course, these movies haven't come out yet. So, this is more going to be some theory, discussion, talking about everything that's involved with the movie, and then why we are excited to see the movie. And so, with that, I'll go ahead and throw it over to my I'll throw it over to you to get us started.
Okay, sounds good. So yeah, I just have plenty of honorable mentions. I just wanted to kind of zoom through to sort of start movies I wouldn't quite put on a top 10 most anticipated for next year, but movies I'm still excited for nonetheless. I think these are in order from when they released because that's how I initially made my list. So whatever didn't make the cut, they're just going to be in this order for release. So some honorable mentions: Argyle, the new Matthew Vaughn, sort of like super meta, spy espionage action comedy with Henry Cavill, Dua Lipa, John Cena, Bryce Dallas Howard, Sam Rockwell, and like I said, Matthew Vaughn returning to write and direct. So um, I'm very excited for that. I put down Madam Web just out of morbid curiosity. It looks like it's going to be maybe our first foray into a live action Spider Verse, but I'm more or less just curious. The trailer honestly really didn't make it look that good, but I'm just more or less morbidly curious, sort of like what direction this takes. If this is going to be a bridge with like the MCU and Sony's Spider-Man universe, and sort of maybe it's set in another Spider-Man universe that we've seen, like a Tobey Maguire universe, or it's in its own thing. I don't know. The trailer made it look sort of like a CW pilot, but I'm just very, very curious where that's going to go. So I'm putting that on here as well. There is an untitled Universal Monsters movie coming out in March, directed by Radio Silence, who, if you don't know, they directed Ready or Not in 2019. They directed the two most recent Scream movies, and they are teaming back up with Melissa Barrera, who's been, sort of a hot topic recently. She will be starring in this, and it is currently untitled, but the most information that I could find on it is that it is going to be a loose adaptation of Dracula's Daughter, which was a sequel to Dracula that followed his daughter, that I guess Melissa Barrera will be playing because she's set to star in it. But as of now, that's currently untitled, but that comes out in March. I'm excited for that. I have Joker: Folly Adieu, a sequel to the hit movie Joker from 2019. I think Joker was a great in and of itself. I really didn't think it needed a sequel. What made it great was that it sort of stayed out of the classic comic book movie tropes of, feeling like it had too many Easter eggs, feeling like it, tried too hard to fit into a cinematic universe. Didn't really set itself up for sequels. So that was kind of its charm and its appeal. So on the one hand, I'm not too excited with them, going like a sequel route. However, they've confirmed that this is just part of the Elseworlds, and it's separate from the Battinson universe. It's separate from the DCEU. It's separate from the new DCU. But Todd Phillips is returning. Joaquin Phoenix is returning. Lady Gaga is playing Harley Quinn, and this movie might be part musical. And it just seems just so crazy, and that just makes me so curious, especially with Joaquin Phoenix returning, because he notoriously despises sequels, and that has kept him from taking comic book movie roles. Most famously, he was offered the role of the Hulk. He was offered the role of Doctor Strange, and both times he turned it down because he just hates the idea of coming back for sequels and franchises. So the fact that he's coming back for a sequel of a comic book movie, nonetheless, sort of just makes me curious that if he's on board, I'm kind of on board. And then I will finish off my honorable mentions list with a movie that's coming out next Christmas on December 25th, an untitled Jordan Peele film. I'm not the biggest fan of Jordan Peele, but I would say that he's definitely one of those names where when he comes out with a new project, I'm definitely wanting to be there day one just to check out what he has, because even if I haven't loved some of his films, while still loving others, even if some of his films weren't exactly my favorite. I just think he's still one of the most original and creative voices working in Hollywood right now, especially in horror. So I haven't found any like sort of confirmation about like a plot or anything. So I don't know if this is necessarily going to be a horror movie, but just given his track record and his career thus far, I think with good reasonable assurance we can say that this is going to be a new horror film from him. So tentatively excited. But yeah, that's just sort of my list of honorable mentions. Just sort of rapid fire.
I like it, mainly because you almost didn't have any movies that I have on my list. So of course, that's always fun to have a little bit of diversity.
For
Um,
sure, for sure.
I will say that I will most likely be seeing a good bit of the movies you mentioned, even if they're not necessarily on my list of like most anticipated. I don't know if we've talked about this before, but there are certain movies that I feel like I have to see in theaters. And then there are other ones that I will definitely watch, but I normally wait till they hit a streaming service. And so that's kind of how I try to do this list, where it was like, if it's really most anticipated to me, I would probably try and see it in theaters if possible. Of course, some of these are streaming service exclusive, so that kind of breaks the rule. But that was kind of how I tried to do my list, just if you were curious. Same with you. I'll just do kind of a quick uh, run through the honorable mentions. So my first one is an interesting one because it was supposed to come out in 2023 and still doesn't technically have a release date, but I would assume it's 2024. That looks like when it got pushed back to, and that is Red One, which is The Rock and Chris Evans are doing a movie together. It's supposed to be an action comedy, but it takes place at Christmas, so it was supposed to be like the family fun movie for this year, and then it just didn't come out. I don't know why. But that one, generally speaking, at this point, I don't think I've disliked a movie that Chris Evans is in. So for him alone, I would watch this movie. Uh, then the next one that I have is Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse. I am not necessarily the biggest fan of the first two movies. However, uh, the spectacle of seeing it in theaters, especially the second one, was enough to warrant me wanting to go back to see it to see like how it ends. Then the next one I have is Rebel Moon Part 2. Since the first one hasn't come out, I didn't feel right putting this in a top 10, but I am really excited for the first one. And in a couple days here after us filming, I will be watching it and hopefully be very excited for the second one. Then I have Alien Romulus. If you watched one of our previous podcasts, I spoke very highly on the 2022 Prey movie, where they essentially rebooted the Predator. And the plan, if I'm not mistaken, is this will be done by Fede Alvarez. And then this kind of reboots the Alien franchise. And I believe the plan is still to eventually lead towards an AVP reboot, and this is gonna kind of be like a new, cool, connected universe. So that all very much excites me. And then the next one that I have is Ballerina. Uh, with John Wick 4, kind of spoiler alert, it pretty much ends the Wick saga. And so we're gonna start getting spin-offs and stuff. Ballerina's been in development hell for ages. But at this point, I pretty much watch anything that's in the Wick universe, so I'm gonna at least give it a shot. I think part of the appeal is Keanu and the cast of characters they put around him, but Ana de Armas is a good actress, so I'm willing to give it a shot, especially because. So another thing you may remember from a previous podcast, David Leitch did Atomic Blonde. That was his first movie after leaving John Wick, and the plan was that she would be a ballerina and Charlize Theron would cross over with Wick, and that has been in development hell for ages. It's probably never going to happen. So we're getting Anna instead, and so I'm assuming they'll do kind of the same thing that they were going to do with Charlize. And since I'm familiar with how that was supposed to go, could be fun. And then my final one is The Fall Guy. Once again, from another podcast, you may have heard that I really like David Leitch. I also really like Ryan Gosling. I felt like for a while there, he was a pretty underrated actor. And of course, everybody loves him now because of Barbie, but he's also good in a lot of stuff. And I feel like him alone would make this movie good. Same with Aaron Taylor Johnson and, of course, David Leitch. The story does not look interesting in the slightest, I'll be honest. That's why I don't have it top 10. But the cast and crew are good enough to where I feel like it would warrant a pretty good watch. And so I'm hoping for the best. But this one was a weird one because the trailer almost excited me 0%, but I love everybody involved.
So I guess I'll sort of go in reverse and sort of talk about the Fall Guy real quick. I guess this year that's going to be my birthday movie. It comes out the day before my birthday, so I guess I kind of just have to see it because I like to see a movie on my birthday. So I guess that'll have to do. Yeah, I'm not the biggest Dave. I mean, I don't dislike David Leitch, but I just don't actively like him like you do. Mostly just because action isn't typically my genre. I thought the trailer looks, it looked good enough. Like you said, Ryan Gosling is a great actor. He's one of my favorite actors working right now. And I mean, the trailers did a lot for me, but I just thought that it seemed like a very interesting concept, and it looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. Ryan Gosling's going to be doing his Ryan Gosling thing with his charm and his comedy. And I loved Bullet Train from 2022. So,
Yeah.
with this being his follow up to Bullet Train, already from Bullet Train, the bar is set pretty high from him. So, I have high hopes for that one as well. Um, yeah, the ballerina. I'm John Wick is not really my franchise. I John Wick Chapter 4 is not one of my favorite movies of this year. It's actually ranked pretty low, a lot lower than most people. I really did not care for it that much. So that kind of killed any sort of excitement with it because well, I guess on the one hand, I agree that part of the draw is, Keanu and John Wick, the character. But I think because I was so exhausted by the time I saw John Wick 4 of sort of the wash, rinse, repeat, I think maybe having a movie in the universe without him will actually make it seem a little bit more fresh and make me like it a little bit more. But I am very curious. I'm a big fan of Anna de Armas, and I believe she is set to star. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Do you know, is Chad Stahelski returning for that one as
Yeah,
well?
if I remember correctly, it is Chad, and you are correct. It is Armis. I will look that up real quick while you continue to talk.
Okay. Yeah, so that and then Beyond the Spider-Verse, I actually doubt is actually coming out next year, just because they'd already pushed it back significantly from when it was originally supposed to come out, and there was all the strikes with the writers and the actors, and then all the problems that they're having with animators in Hollywood right now. I'm kind of skeptical. I would like for it to come out next year because I'm a big fan of Into the Spider-Verse and I like to cross the Spider-Verse a good bit. So I am very excited for Beyond the Spider-Verse, but I'm somewhat tentative because I kind of feel like it's going to get delayed, um,
Okay,
probably
that's
into
fair.
2025.
Um, Real quick, so it's actually not being directed by Chad Stahelski. It's being directed by Len Weissman, who it looks like directed the first four Underworld movies and the Total Recall reboot. If that gives you an
I think he
idea
also
into
did
him.
Die Hard 4, right?
Let's see.
Live Free or Die
Um,
Hard, I
it looked
believe.
he was the director of two episodes of the Swamp Thing TV show. The Total
Good
Recall
show,
reboot. Yep,
underrated.
he
Everyone
did.
watch it.
He did do Live Free or Die Hard. So I already like the guy. That I
Okay.
forget if I've said on this podcast before, but that is a complete hot take I'm willing to die on the hill for. Number four is like universally hated, and to me, it's arguably the second best, if not the best. Like it's really good, and I feel like it came out at a time where people didn't really understand the gravity of how much technology could hurt Earth. And so it kind of went over people's heads, but being as how I work in tech, the movie scares the crap out of me and it's awesome.
And what else am I missing that you had discussed?
The last one is oh sorry, not the last one. Alien Romulus, Rebel Moon Part 2 and Red One.
Yeah, Red One, I wasn't familiar with at all until you just mentioned it, but you know, on the one hand, I do like Chris Evans. I kind of notoriously don't like The Rock, especially now. And from what you said, this sounds like it's gonna be another like movie that Netflix or something money launders $300 million to make, and it's
It
gonna
is
be
supposed to come to
forgotten.
Netflix, so
Yeah, and it's gonna be forgotten. It's gonna be number one trending for like a week, and then no one's ever gonna talk about it again. That's just sort of the general vibe. So I can't say I'm honestly very excited for that.
um they described it, I'm pretty sure it was Deck the Halls. No. I'm drawing a blank on it. What's the Arnold Schwarzenegger Christmas movie?
Jingle all the way.
They described it as Jingle All the Way meets Die Hard, was the exact description.
That is interesting. Okay, maybe I'm morbidly curious. Rebel Moon Part 2. Yeah, I considered putting that on my list. I just, like you, I will be seeing Rebel Moon Part 1 in a couple of days, and I am very excited for that, but I just didn't want to put Part 2 because I've also been keeping myself from everything Rebel Moon. Like, I watched the first trailer when it first debuted, and I haven't watched any of the subsequent trailers. I've been keeping myself away from a lot of the marketing. Um, Not because I'm not excited, but just because I've just had a lot of problems with trailers and marketing nowadays. So it's one of those movies where I am excited for it, but I've been keeping, all expectations and everything away. And then I'm looking forward to actually checking it out to see if I will be excited for part two. The quick
I
turnaround has
com
me a little nervous, though.
I completely agree with you about normally I just watch the first trailer and that's it. However, somebody like it came across my feed. Zack Snyder did like a 15-minute behind the scenes meet the cast and like how the movie was made, and I just decided to give it a shot and that made me like it more. I think I've probably told you, I don't know if I've said it on the podcast, I love how the movies are made. So going behind the scenes and seeing like the love and effort that him and everybody involved put into it just made me like it more. Now, when you say quick turnaround, didn't it get filmed at the same time and split into two separate movies?
I am unclear on that,
Okay.
to be perfectly honest. Although I am kind of, I don't know, now like part one, part two movies, I just feel like those get kind of exhausting. And I feel like Hollywood's kind of overdone them a bit. So that's another thing that sort of contributes. But if you remember from my director's list, Zack Snyder's one of my favorite working directors right now. So this is his rejected pitch for a Star Wars movie where he just said F it and Netflix gave him an unlimited budget to make his own Star Wars movie. So I am excited, but I just did not put part two up there yet.
Yeah, so
So
it says that Rebel Moon Part 1 and 2 were filmed at the same time, and then he decided to split them up into two parts instead of doing one gigantic epic movie.
okay, I can work with that. Although there's now all these people saying that like they basically Snyder cutted him again, except at Netflix,
Really?
where like yeah, apparently it's like this movie is like 2.5 hours, but it's another thing where it's like, oh, but in a couple months, Netflix will release the like 3 hour director's cut version.
Hmm.
And so everyone's like, well, it got done to him again.
Fun.
S-
That.
So that's another thing that kind of killed my excitement a little bit because it's like, well, I mean, it's cool to watch it now because, like, we said this comes out in a couple days as of recording this. So it's like, I would love to see it now, but why would I watch the like less full version now when in a couple months I'll just have to rewatch it again where it's probably actually like coherent and longer and fuller?
Yeah, it's kind of like the argument we always go back and forth on of like, you see the theatrical cut and then the director's cut. 9 times out of 10 is better, so that is interesting. I did not know that. I figured he got full creative liberty there, so that kind of sucks to hear.
Well, who it could just be clickbait where it's like maybe he did, and then people are just misinterpreting it as, the studio doing it to him again to get more clicks, and maybe he's actually just on board with it the whole time. So who knows? I guess we'll see. I guess I feel like you'd be able to feel it because I remember seeing like BVS in theaters and being like, this just doesn't feel right, even though like
Oh
it
yeah.
hadn't come out
I
yet that what the studio had done. So I feel like when we watch it in a couple days, we'll be able to tell if it feels like there's stuff missing.
I agree completely, especially if there's more heavy on the action and it feels like the story's crap.
Exactly. Um,
The last one
but
was Alien Romulus before you move on.
yeah, well, that is my number 10,
Oh,
coincidentally or
perfect.
not. So perfect little segue. So yeah, my number 10 is Alien Romulus. Like you said, this is a new movie in the Alien franchise that's sort of it's not canon, but it's basically supposed to be a full standalone, its own thing, not have any connections to any of the prior movies. And it might, if this is successful enough, be like the jumping off point for like a soft rebooted Alien franchise moving forward. So this comes out August 16th. And originally it was supposed to be a straight to Hulu movie like Prey was. However, it is now getting a full theatrical release on August 16th and then be available on Hulu afterwards. But yeah, Fede Alvarez is returning from vague producing and is finally, writing and directing again. Good to have him back. I'm a fan of some of his previous work. Um, but yeah, so this is, even though it doesn't directly tie into any one of the previous movies, apparently this is set between the events of Alien and Aliens. If you recall, there's like 100-year time gap sort of in between. Um, but what interests me about this, not just being, I'm a big fan of the Alien franchise, so just having another Alien movie excites me. Having Fede Alvarez returning and directing it, returning just to making movies again and directing it, has me excited. But the premise just sounds really interesting to me. So we don't have specific plot details yet, but essentially what Fede Alvarez is doing is he's basically doing a cabin in the woods slasher, but set in the alien universe in the future. So essentially, the central premise is supposed to be this group of teens in this future. I believe it's like the 2100s or 2200s, where mankind has like colonized different planets. They basically go to a planet to party and drink and have sex and what kids do in cabin in the woods movies. So they go to this like deserted planet to like have their weekend getaway because they have that technology and capability to just go to an abandoned planet, and they encounter the xenomorph. So that whole premise of just being like a very standard cabin in the woods slasher, but in the alien universe, just has me excited. Like I said, I'm a big fan of the talent involved. It's great to see another proper alien movie, and I hope that this is a springboard for A, more alien movies, but B, maybe that potential, crossover with Prey of like a new rebooted sort of alien predator continuity. But the only thing that's dampening my excitement a little bit is because Disney owns Fox now. So this is going to be a movie that, while through 20th Century or Pictures, as it's called now, it's basically all through Disney ultimately. And I don't think that they've handled some of the IPs they've bought recently very well, namely Star Wars and Indiana Jones. So this being one of the first big Fox movies coming out, um, since the merger fully took place, one of the big Fox legacy IPs that Disney is now moving forward with, um, has me a little bit hesitant. But yeah, so my number 10 is Alien Romulus.
Yeah, very solid pick. This one almost made my list, but I saw a trailer this week that ended up pushing it into my 11th spot. But it's definitely interesting, or I should say tied with my 11th spot. Um, it's interesting because I feel like when we do our favorite movies of 2024 a year from now, that this list of anticipated has actually a lot more potential than I originally gave 2024 credit for. And I think Alien Romulus is one of those. Like you said, it has all of the makings for an amazing horror film, but there's also of course, the potential for it to just not be good. I'm kind of with you where I am very hesitant to trust Disney as of late, so we shall see. But yeah, hopefully this one works out. I would love another AVP. And yeah, so with that one, we'll move into my number 10, which is Night Swim. If I'm not mistaken, this is the second movie of the Atomic Monster Blumhouse collaboration after their merger. I believe Megan was the first one. And while I was super excited for Megan, and in my personal opinion, it completely disappointed. I think they messed up by going, I believe it was PG-13, and Night Swim is also PG-13, which scares me. And I know they're doing this so they can reach a wider audience. But to me, especially with horror movies that aren't designed to be like psychological thriller where you can kind of get away with it, I really feel like you should just go for the R. It's kind of speaking off of Megan. All of the kills were off screen and they were designed to be tasteful, which once again is fine. But like three people died in the film, and I just expected more, especially coming from James Wan and Jason Blum. I feel like that's just what they do, and they didn't do it. So I am choosing to stay optimistic for this movie, but that's why I have it at 10. The story's basically what would happen if a pool was haunted, which is cool enough to me. It seems original, but also I'm slightly worried that it's just gonna be Megan. And so, don't get me wrong, Megan was cool, but it was not at all what I was expecting, and it completely went like under my bar that I had set for it. So, giving them another shot, but if Night Swim doesn't hit my expectations, I may be less enthusiastic about this merger moving forward. So that's my number 10.
So, funnily enough, Night Swim is my number 8. So I'll just move into my discussion with that.
Okay.
Um, y- I think I'm definitely a little bit, I mean, obviously it being 8 and it being year 10, my 8 and then year 10. I'm a little bit more excited, a little bit more optimistic. I don't think Atomic Monster really has had a miss. I don't know, I never really had high expectations for Megan or Mathregan as it, you know, her formal government name. Um, but so I didn't have as high of expectations going in, so I didn't feel as let down as I guess I would have if I were in your shoes and got my hopes up. I personally don't mind if a horror movie's PG-13 because I don't think it has to be R. Not saying that you were saying that, but I just think it being PG-13 in a horror movie doesn't immediately turn me off. Um, but yeah, so I have a fear of water and drowning and swimming. So this is something that's definitely right up my alley. In terms of I love being scared, so this is definitely something that I feel like can do that. I think the trailers for this have been very effective, and I really just want to give some credit to at least the first trailer, the trailer that I keep seeing in theaters when it plays before a different movie, because I love when trailers do what this first trailer did, which is basically the trailer is like an extended sequence of the movie. So instead of just showing you like a bunch of different scenes and potentially spoil things, it just like is like basically a long shot of like a 2 minute portion of the movie. And this trailer sort of opens up sort of collages for about 30 seconds, but the main bulk is just this one incident with this teen girl, the daughter of the family, in the pool at night with her boyfriend playing Marco Polo. So I just appreciate that the trailer did that. I think it was very effective for me. I just think that the visuals looked, very scary. I think it sort of capitalized on the premise well. I don't want to just like describe the trailer, but it was just like really cool because it's like a swimming pool, but she like swims down into it and it basically like doesn't have a bottom. Like she just keeps swimming and she looks up and there's like a little teeny rectangle of light as if like the pool, was like this little portal into something. And then there's like some weird like ghost thing inside the pool for a good jump scare. So it just looks very scary. It looks like it's playing on that sort of childhood fear. Maybe other people didn't have this, but I certainly did, where it's like you're in a pool and you underwater, you close your eyes and you think that there could be a shark like 2 feet in front of your face. Um, so I think that this is sort of capitalizing on that sort of fear and bringing it back to life from childhood, because like you said, it just sounds silly, but I just think it could really work, especially because the trailer looks promising to me. So big fan of Blumhouse as well. Big fan of Atomic Monster, James Wan, who's not directing, but he's producing. So, but I still give him credit for that. But yeah, I put Night Swim as my number 8.
Two things to bounce off of that before we move on to your number 9. The first thing is I completely agree with what you said about the first trailer, and I think that's when I had it a lot higher. I unfortunately went to go see a movie where they showed the second trailer, and the second trailer does exactly what you'd expect from a Hollywood trailer, and it ruined a lot of the mystique for me as well. So that's probably a good thing that you haven't seen the second trailer. And then the other thing I was going to say is I do agree. I don't think a horror movie has to be PG-13. I would say the type of horror movie that I like and that I've become accustomed to from Blumhouse and Atomic Monster is R-rated. There's just stuff that you're just not allowed to do with the PG-13 horror movie. And once again, that's perfectly fine, especially if it's going for more psychological thriller, suspense, those types of things where you don't need that extra layer, but the type of stuff that I like, and generally speaking, the stuff that I've come to expect from those two companies, I don't think can be achieved by PG-13. And once again, this is completely going off of Megan. Maybe Night Swim will be awesome, and Megan just, I don't know, kind of like you said with the fear of water. Uh, I hate dolls. And the once again, I mentioned I work in tech. All of us are afraid of AI. So the idea of this little Mithrigan that would essentially take over and break its protocol and go to town sounded awesome. And then she kills everybody off screen, and the one person killed on screen doesn't even look like a real kill because like they couldn't show blood or anything. And so I don't know. It was just a little bit of a letdown to me. I really wish that at least with Mithrigan they had gone R. Maybe Night Swim will be different.
Yes, that's fair. And this one comes out very soon on January 5th.
Yeah, it's
So yeah,
basically a
we'll be
Christmas
seeing
movie.
this in a couple weeks. Yeah, exactly. Um, okay, so it's my number nine then, right?
Yes.
Okay. So my number nine is a movie that honestly I don't know much about, but just who is involved is what intrigues me. So for my number nine, I am going with The Watchers, which is coming out June 7th of next year. And the reason that I am interested in this movie is because it is the writing and directorial debut of Ishana Knight Shyamalan, who is the daughter of M. Night Shyamalan. So I'm always kind of interested whenever like the children of famous people, speaking of Night Swim with Wyatt Russell, when the children of really famous people, try their hand at not necessarily acting, but like writing, directing. And I'm a big fan of M. Night Shyamalan. I tend to defend him a lot. I think he's very underrated as a writer director, and he is producing this. But it's just the fact that it's his daughter making her writing and directing debut. He's still producing it. It's still a horror film. All these things get me very intrigued. So I'm just going to read the premise just straight from Wikipedia, basically, because not much has been given about this movie. We haven't seen any trailers or footage. But it stars Dakota Fanning as 28-year-old artist Mina, who gets stranded in an expansive, untouched forest in Western Ireland. Upon finding shelter, she unknowingly becomes trapped alongside three strangers who are all being watched and stalked by mysterious creatures in the night. So immediately I read this and I got The Ritual vibes, which is one of my favorite horror movies that I've talked about before, about a group of backpackers in Sweden that basically get lost in this really old big forest and succumb to the various supernatural forces at play there. So this very much gave me vibes reminiscent of that. So the premise is intriguing to me. M. Night's producing it. His daughter is making her debut writing and directing it. So overall, it just sort of makes it for a movie that I'm putting at my number nine. And it also is starring Georgina Campbell, who was the female lead in Barbarian, starring alongside Dakota Fanning, I guess, is one of the three strangers that it mentions. So she was great in that movie. I'm a big fan of that movie. So the fact that, and I haven't seen her really in anything. So the fact that she's returning for another horror movie gets me very excited. So number nine for me is The Watchers.
Yeah, I this is not one that I had on my list. Um, I think I am less of an M Night fan than you are, if I had to say, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. The movie sounds cool. That's kind of all I can. And I also do agree with you that it's cool to see when the offspring of artists do stuff. So I can at least agree with that. But yeah, it definitely sounds cool. I know that you love. Dang it, now I'm already forgetting the name of it. What's the one that you said this is like?
The Ritual.
Thank you. I was about to say the outfit. That's not right. Uh, I know that you love the ritual, and I still need to watch that one. So that's definitely cool.
Yeah, but who knows? A trailer could drop and it could look like trash. But as of now, all those like all the behind the scenes stuff has me intrigued.
It's funny because I feel like a lot of the movies on my list that I picked for later in the year, the trailer is gonna drop, and I'm gonna immediately put it lower on the list. So I feel that. Um, so my number nine is the Borderlands movie. And first and foremost, being directed by Eli Roth, so naturally, even if it wasn't adapting one of my favorite video games, then I would still watch it. But anyway, I have extremely fond memories with the Borderlands franchise. I'm a very interesting gamer. I know this isn't a gaming podcast, but I don't really play story games. However, the Borderlands games are one of the few exceptions just because I absolutely love the world. I love the art style and I really enjoy the characters, the story, the lore, all that jazz. And so when they announced that they were doing a movie, naturally I was invested. And there still isn't really much known about this other than a couple of the actors that it's starring, and they definitely went all out to get Kevin Hart, Kate Blanchett, Jamie Lee Curtis, and more. And so, hoping for the best. It seems like the 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 cast and crew is put together to make a hit. Of course, anybody who's in the gaming world knows that doing a movie adaptation hasn't necessarily worked out. I know that The Last of Us is heralded as like one of the greatest shows ever. That's like a it's like an outlier. Generally, they don't go like that. Plus, that was a show that was over multiple episodes. So they were able to really dive into the story. And I haven't watched it, but from my understanding, they basically did like a shot for shot adaptation. So it's pretty easy to hit the mark when you literally just do the same story. So, anyway, hoping for the best. I feel like I say that with every video game adaptation. I just kind of hope for the best, but I feel like Eli Roth has a pretty good track record, and I like the cast. So this one's my number 9. But that's also why it's 9, because don't really know much about it, and I would say some of the ones that are higher, I would be a little bit more excited for, but definitely excited for this one.
Okay. Yeah. No, I know nothing about Borderlands. I am not a gamer whatsoever. So I have not played these games. I haven't seen really any gameplay. Um, I am not familiar with the lore, the story, or characters at all. So that's sort of why I didn't include this one, just because knew nothing about it. Eli Roth is a director that I appreciate and I respect, at least in the horror space. So on the one hand, I am somewhat excited just on the basis of it being a new Eli Roth movie. Now, like I said, I'm not too familiar with the franchise as the games, but to my understanding, this isn't like a horror game.
Mm-mm.
So I am a little bit intrigued at him. Like I know he did like Death Wish, the remake, which I didn't
Yep.
see, but seeing him like get out of horror, I'm somewhat interested to see like what a non-horror Eli Roth project would look like. And I know I could just watch Death Wish, but you know, we'll see how this goes. But yeah, it's always good when the person behind it is like a huge fan. And I know that he's a huge Borderlands fan and he's been trying to make this forever. So that's always a good sign. And Kate Blanchett, surprisingly enough, apparently is also a huge fan. So she's like really excited to star in this movie as like I guess like the main character.
Yeah,
Um,
Lilith is one of the so in the Borderlands game, there's essentially 4 people you can play as. They all have different play styles, and Lilith is one of them. And if I'm not mistaken, she's most people's favorite. So yeah, I mean, it makes sense. And I totally forgot. So Claptrap is like this cute little helper droid robot thing that most people in the gaming world know. He's like one of the really fun side characters. Even if you haven't played the game, you're familiar with Claptrap, and they're bringing in Jack Black to voice him. So that's awesome. If you're a Jack Black fan, of course. I don't know how I forgot him when I was listing off the people.
so yep, he's got a great cast. I like the creative talent behind the scenes. And yeah, it's always just a good sign when the creative team involved is just really into the subject matter that they're adapting. So for me, the bar for a video game movie is Sonic the Hedgehog. So we'll see if it beats Sonic the Hedgehog.
Not Rampage.
Not Rampage, unfortunately.
Um,
Um,
did
so
you
since I already
see
did
the
my number 8, oh
Oh,
sorry,
sorry. Did you do the house with the clock? Did you see the house with the clock in its walls?
I didn't. But my understanding was that was still horror. It was just like a
It
kids
is.
horror.
Yeah, it was him going into like doing a more kids horror kind of like a Monster House thing. It was done pretty well, and I would probably imagine that, especially given, so generally speaking, you know the type of horror that he does. It's kind of very visceral. House with a Clock in Its Walls was extremely cinematic, something more similar to like a Doctor Strange. And considering the art style and the craziness of the video games, I would assume it would have a similar look and feel to House of the Clock, and as well as with, of course, like you said, the Death Wish action added in. And so, if you are curious, I didn't know if you had seen it, so I was going to let you know it'd probably look like that, but you haven't, so my apologies.
What maybe before this one I'll watch through my gaps in his filmography.
Would you
Um,
like for me to do my number 8 before we go back to you?
yes, that was what I was gonna suggest since number 8 was already covered for me.
Okay, perfect. So my number 8 is going to come completely out of the blue, and it is The Bricklayer. This is being directed by Rennie Harlan, and this one kind of shocked me. You know how actors will often produce stuff, but they're starring in it, and they just get a producing credit?
Right,
So Gerard Butler is producing this, and apparently he was about as hands-on as physically possible without actually being the director. So it's kind of like Rennie Harlan and Gerard Butler. To my knowledge, he hasn't done a movie like that before. So I'm kind of interested to see his like pseudo directing style, I guess, if that makes sense. But this stars Aaron Eckert, and it's just another like this is not going to pitch the movie well at all, but as I've talked about before, you know, you have those different eras of action movies where you have the movie that sets the tone. For the most recent set of the genre, it would be John Wick, and then everybody's trying to like make the next John Wick, and so this is kind of another carbon copy where Aaron Eckert he's the retired man who you know he worked for the CIA, but he's out of it. You know, he's not going to get back in, and he just has fun time. You know, he loves just laying his bricks, and it calms him. And since he had that life where it was nonstop, boom boom boom, he gets to just be calm and have fun with his bricks. And he gets pulled out of retirement and is working with Nina Dobrev from Vampire Diaries, and he has to go and stop. Like this is gonna. The cast features like every uh, uh, side character who was famous in a movie like 10 years ago, if that makes any sense. Like Tim Blake Nelson, Clifton Collins, Brigitte Nielsen. Like it's a bunch of random people who, if you talk to a 15-year-old, they have no idea who they are, but somebody older would probably recognize their faces. And so that's always fun. Um, this looks like just one of those direct to DVD B movies that I'm gonna love, but I'm sure won't actually do well in theaters. And yeah, it just the trailer definitely won me over. Rennie Harlan's pretty good at action, and I would say I'm primarily interested because I just kind of want to see what Gerard Butler is like. And I'm double checking myself. Yeah, he has never actually directed something, so I don't know if he's done this sort of like hands-on producer thing before. But the this one just kind of was very interesting. I also really like Aaron Eckert. I feel like he's not in enough movies personally. I you know I've mentioned I Frankenstein. Of course, most people probably know him for Two Face, but the White House, sorry, not White House Down. Olympus Has Fallen trilogy is awesome. Aaron Eckert's really good in that. And so yeah, it's just cool to like see him back in movies and also do like legitimate hands-on action. He did all of his own stunts, and considering his age and build and the type of actor he is, that's not something you really see from him. So that also should be cool. So yeah, there's just like a lot of stuff that was put into this. Apparently it's based on a book like everything is. And so if I like it, I'll probably read the book, but yeah, this one was a trailer that dropped like 2 weeks ago, kind of came out of nowhere, and it just really interested me.
I have never heard of this movie until you just mentioned it. It definitely sounds like something that would very much be your thing, but I don't think that this is something that would very much be my thing. I am kind of
Shocker.
curious with Gerard Butler actually being like a basically a director. That does make me curious.
Yeah, that and
Um,
the fact that he's paired up with Rennie Harlan just makes it that much more interesting.
right. That almost made me forget. I forgot we're getting a new Strangers movie next year, and I don't know from Rennie Harlan. And
Yeah,
I don't know how that didn't make my list, but I forgot that that existed and it wasn't even on my radar.
it's on my list, so we will get to talk
Okay.
about it later.
Okay, cool. I don't know how that slipped. I was that on the Wikipedia page? Full transparency, just looked at Wikipedia. I don't know if that was on there because that definitely should have. But anyway, yeah, I have not heard of this. It sounds kind of just like The Beekeeper, the other movie that's coming out
Oh,
next year with David
100%.
Ayer.
Every
He just
every
wants to he
comment
just
was
wants to
like
keep
we
his bees.
every comment was just we've got the beekeeper, now the bricklayer, next we're gonna, and everybody just was trying to comment what the next B one would be. Someone was like it's the butler and they're bringing Michael Caine out of retirement to play Alfred. Like everybody was making jokes. It was very funny.
It's funny. So yeah, well, we shall see. I don't know if that's one that I'll be checking out, to be completely honest, but who knows?
The if no one was able to tell in the like 20 episodes of this podcast we've done, this is going to be the perfect episode to figure out the type of movies that we each like and how we differ.
Very much so. Um, sort of speaking of, my number seven is going to be the upcoming Nosferatu remake from Robert Eggers. So I'm not the hugest Robert Eggers fan. I think he's done some good stuff. I was a huge fan of The Witch, or The Vivitch, as I prefer to call it. I liked The Northman a good bit. I really was not a big fan of The Lighthouse. That was kind of a dud for me. But this is Robert Eggers' fourth film, and it will be remaking the classic, 1922 Nosferatu movie that most people, if you're our generation, you probably know him from the Graveyard Shift episode of SpongeBob. Um, but yeah, so I have not seen the original. I do own the original on Blu-ray, and I do plan to watch it before this one comes out. This actually comes out next Christmas, so they're releasing a Nosferatu movie at Christmas time on the same day as a Jordan Peele horror movie. So that should be interesting. Wonder if one of those is going to move. But essentially, the basic premise is it's set back in the late 19th century. Robert Eggers, as you may know, he loves like immersive movies where all of his movies so far have taken place at some point in history, and he goes like all out in terms of the characters dressing accurately, the characters speaking accurately, and even in the case of The Lighthouse, he filmed it with a camera that was like a modern recreation of a camera from the 1890s when it was set. So I'm really excited for that, just because I at least appreciate his craft of really immersing yourself in this world. But essentially, Nosferatu, I'm going to once again just read the premise straight from the Wikipedia article. It says Nosferatu is a gothic tale of obsession when a haunted young woman and the terrifying vampire infatuated with her between a haunted young woman and the terrifying vampire infatuated with her, causing untold horror. So it is starring Bill Skarsgård as the titular vampire, Count Orlok. Huge fan of Bill Skarsgård. I love when he gets weird. I love when he gets makeup on, like he did for Pennywise. So the fact that he's being put in this very iconic vampire makeup, I just have nothing but high hopes. It's also got Nicholas Holt. It's got Aaron Taylor Johnson. It's got Willem Dafoe. Really excited for this sort of cast. But mostly what I'm excited for is just vampires being scary again. So I feel like we're just now getting vampires and werewolves out of the Twilight funk, which sort of set back both of those respective not franchises, but set back vampire and werewolf movies for about the past decade or so. And I'm glad that they're finally starting to come back. So I think that this is the perfect film that's going to sort of like scratch that itch I have for like a genuine scary vampire movie again. And putting that in the mainstream, since Robert Eggers is now more of a household name. So hopefully this can just continue the push to reclaiming vampires as scary. So yes, I am putting Nosferatu the remake at my number seven.
Yeah, this one I know you've mentioned it before, but I didn't really think to put it on my list. It definitely sounds interesting and I could see myself watching it. I will say I completely agree about Skarsgård. I love that he keeps doing action stuff, but we all just know he's a horror guy. Um, of course, he's done a lot of indie horror, and then like you said, I feel like most people will know him for it. But yeah, it sounds good. Good for Aaron Taylor Johnson. I guess he's doing a good couple of movies in 2024. I feel like he also is a guy that doesn't get a lot of work and probably should. Um, yeah. So that I mean, it sounds good. I am not the biggest Eggers fan, but I will probably watch the movie. Um, moving on to my number seven is the spoiler from earlier. I just put this complete Strangers trilogy because they're literally coming out back to back to back to back, and like I'm not good. I didn't. I'm not just gonna pick one. I guess is the best way to put it. Um,
What do you
so
mean? Chapter 2 is going to be the best when we know nothing about Chapter 1 yet.
yeah, that's no, the end credit scene for chapter two will be the best movie. That's exactly what. But yeah, the So once again, also done by Rennie Harlan, who has horror experience, but generally speaking, is more known for being an action guy. And so I think even you were also kind of like, what? Why is Rennie Harlan doing this? But from everything I've read, he's a big Strangers fan. He's wanted to do something with the IP for a while. So, like you said earlier, I agree. I think when someone's a big fan, it just makes it that much better. In theory, they would do something really good with the IP. I know apparently this was a very divisive film, but I still think that Spiral was done really well. So I like to use that as an example. Chris Rock loved Saw and went for it, and I think it worked. And so I do have high hopes for this. As you probably know, The Strangers is one of my favorite horror movies of all time. I absolutely love this movie. I still love showing it to people when I try to introduce them to horror. I know you and I saw Prey at Night in theaters together and did not really like it. I have since rewatched it and I do like it now. I don't think it's as good as the original, but I think for what it was trying to do, it's actually a pretty good movie. If you almost make it standalone, I think it works a lot better. And so, yeah, I'm excited for this trilogy. From everything we know, if I remember correctly, it's all three movies are supposed to take place on the same night or something, right?
Don't know about the same night per se, but it'll be the same set of human characters, I guess, interacting with the strangers, and they'll pretty much just pick up one after the other. So maybe
Okay.
like this, not you know what I mean, not necessarily the same night per se, but they'll be it's very tight, like one big story.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, my pitch was I think it would be really cool if the first movie is basically his take on the original Strangers. Maybe it's not a couple that's having relationship issues who are dealing with the home invasion. Maybe it's not that, but it's a different set of people who are being tormented. Then in the sequel, we see what happens before that leads up to it, and then the third one is what happens after. And I think it'd be cool if they did like a perspective shift where we like get to see it from their point of view or maybe another person's point of view, or kind of in my mind I imagine almost like in Trick or Treat, where we see the events of Halloween night play almost out of order, and then slowly as you keep watching little things are revealed that tie everything together. That's one of my favorite parts of Trick or Treat. I think that's done really well. And of course, he's doing it over three movies, but I personally think that'd be a really cool way for them to go about it. But that's just a pitch. It's probably not even going to happen.
Like I said earlier, I had forgotten this movie. It didn't show up in my research, so I didn't include it. I don't know if I think it might have been an honorable mention for my list, to be completely honest, because I'm not completely sold. Like you, I'm a huge fan of the original. It's one of my favorite horror movies of all time. I have not rewatched the sequel since theaters a couple years back. So maybe I will like it like you, but I remember seeing it in theaters and really not liking it. I just a couple things, just Rennie Harlan, I know you said, he has horror experience. I believe he directed like Nightmare on Elm Street 4 and
And
like
Deep Blue
some
Sea.
other and sure, and Deep Blue Sea, right. Um so he has some horror roots. Nothing I would say is like my favorite horror roots by any means. So it makes me a little hesitant that someone, with his filmography is taking on a horror franchise that I love that might not have the horror experience that I guess I value. And then I don't know. I really love the first one, and I really think this is one of the cases where it just does not need sequels or reboots or anything. I think it's just perfect as a one-off. And I think part of the appeal of, the strangers as characters is that we don't know anything about them. We don't know who they are. We don't know why they're doing this. And the only clue about why they're doing this is just because you are home. So it's really like their motive there's no motive. And I'm just worried that if doing three films, they're going to try and explain things that I don't want explained or try and do too much that I don't want them to do. Because I just think what the beauty of the first one is the simplicity. So I'm a lot more hesitant. I'm probably a lot more pessimistic, but I am just curious because it kind of just came out of nowhere. Because I remember when they originally announced that they were even doing this, they're like, "Oh yeah, by the way, we already filmed." Like they literally like filmed before they even made the official announcement. So it just kind of came out of nowhere, and it's just kind of bizarre that they just did three, and then they're all three releasing theatrically, and they're all supposed to all three release theatrically in the same year, just a couple months from each other. It's just really bizarre. So I'm morbidly curious from that perspective, but it was just yeah, it's just really interesting.
Yeah, that's almost why I have it in the top 10, but not like super high. Of course, it's only at 7. Everything you said. They're doing a full trilogy. If I remember correctly, they're all releasing, I think it's like May, June, July. Like it's literally 3 months back to back, which is insane. I agree with you completely. The Strangers was one of those movies that never should have had even Pray at Night, let alone a trilogy. And then I also agree with you about um how he is a unconventional pick, considering how he has primarily done action movies and pretty cheesy ones at that. So it's definitely an interesting pick. I think that's why I chose to reference Chris Rock, because of course he's a comedian, and then all of a sudden he did horror, and at least to me it worked. So I'm kind of hoping for the best. I was looking at it. His next movie after the Strangers trilogy is Deep Water, which of course also stars Aaron Eckert, and it's a shark movie. So that one could at least interest you, a little shark horror. Maybe if you like the Strangers trilogy, you can go get scared by some sharks.
There we go. All right, you sold me. This is my new number one. So yeah, I am definitely gonna check it out day one. I am definitely curious. I just wouldn't necessarily say I'm optimistic.
That's fair.
Um, okay, so my number six, I am going with Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire.
No way.
So,
That's my number 6 as well. Perfect
really?
alignment. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I guess I'll just sort of kick us off. I'm a huge Godzilla fan in general. He's one of my favorite, not just monsters, but just characters. Growing up, I was obsessed with Godzilla and I watched a whole bunch of the movies, both Japanese and American. I have places in my heart for all of them. I'm a big fan of this current monster verse that they got going on. It's probably my favorite, since the MCU has sort of fallen out of favor with me, this is probably my favorite working, ongoing now. Um, and yeah, I'm a big fan of Adam Wingard, who's returning to direct this. Big fan of this version of Godzilla. Big fan of the how expanded the universe has become, and I am just looking forward to more big monster fighting big monster. Simple as that. Um, Not too much is known about the plot, but it's a full team up this time. Spoilers for a movie like Godzilla versus Kong, but that came out a couple years ago, and I don't think most people will care. It starts off as a rivalry, but then in the end, they have to team up to defeat the big bad. And then now I guess they're just starting off as friends and allies, and they need each other's help to defeat a bigger evil. So the trailer premiered a couple weeks ago. It looks just like everything I want it to be. It just looks like big, cheesy, blockbuster CGI monsters fighting. So looking forward to that. The only reason it's like at number six and not higher is just because, I think Godzilla versus Kong is my least favorite of the MonsterVerse. I still like it, but it's my least favorite. And what I didn't like about it was the parts we got that were just, big monkey fighting punching big lizard, whereas great, but it's just they focused too much on boring human characters. And so that's my like reservation for this one because we're getting some returning human characters and we're getting some new ones. And I just want what I want. I want what I'm coming for, and I don't want them to sort of bait and switch us with like make it mostly just boring human characters. If you have human characters where the story's actually interesting, that's fine. I just thought the human story was just so boring in Godzilla versus Kong. So I'm just hoping not for a repeat. So that makes me a little bit less excited, but overall, this is just a franchise that I love, and the trailer looks awesome. And it's not going to be a good movie. It's not going to be like, an Oscar-winning script, but like I said, it's big CGI lizard punching big CGI gorilla. So I am very on board.
Yeah, so like I said, this one's my number six. I didn't think we'd have any alignment, so that's fun. Uh, and you'll probably remember I famously was not excited for this movie. Kind of for all the things you said. I think that the first one just was probably one of the most hype I was for. That is totally improper English. I was super excited for the first Godzilla vs. Kong, and it really let me down for the reasons you said. The movie pretty much single-handedly makes me dislike Millie Bobby Brown. Her character is extremely annoying. I don't like a lot of the human characters in that, and I just wanted to, like you said, see more CGI fights. That's the type of thing you go to see when you go to see that kind of movie. It's right up my alley. And the reason why it's number six is also because of what you said. The trailer was just that good. I was extremely hesitant. I saw the trailer and I'm right back on board. What can I say? I'm very easily entertained by the type of stuff that's like, I don't know. It's like designed to just be a fun outing. And so I think, like you said, it's not going to win an Oscar. I think it should just be a fun movie. Hopefully, I. It's funny because so with the Transformers movies, one of the biggest complaints is that they spend too much time with the humans and not enough time with the robots. The original animated movie that everybody was so fond of is all robot. They barely have humans, if any, if I remember correctly. And so everybody was always just like, make it just more robot. And I'm sure there's constraints with funding for the CGI or whatever. But like, we're all there, like you said, to see the big, gigantic kaiju fight each other. And so just make it happen. I don't know how else to say that. And if I'm not mistaken, in the trailer, it looks like we're gonna get some other monsters. So that should be fun. I more or less am excited. And other thing I add is, contrary to what you said, I know you're a big Godzilla fan. I'm a big King Kong fan. I didn't hate the two Godzilla movies. They're definitely not bad, but Kong Skull Island is one of my favorites. I've watched all the King Kong movies even since it was just a guy in a gorilla suit from like the 40s. And so I'm a big King Kong fan. I like that we're gonna get his like what I think the internet's calling him Daddy Kong or whatever the one is in the trailer. And so yeah, I'm hoping for the best, and I'm hoping it doesn't let me down like the first one did.
I agree. Okay. So my number five, a movie that I am very excited for, but we know very little about, is Smile 2.
Mm.
So Smile was one of my favorite horror movies and one of my favorite movies, period, of 2022. I found it to be very original. I found the visuals to be terrifying. I found it to be genuinely scary and had great character moments and messaging about, mental health and trauma and how that spreads. And they announced it's one of the, in contrast to The Strangers, it was one of those movies where I watched it and I thought, this is something that maybe not, needs a franchise, but I would like to see a sequel because I don't know if it's really a spoiler to say that a movie doesn't do something, but essentially in the first one, you sort of learn about this like demon, this curse that's sort of spreading through the smile. And that's kind of all you know. It doesn't really tell you like, where did it come from? What is it exactly? How do you defeat it? Sort of things like that. So I think a sequel actually would do good to sort of explore the lore and the background of this creature. The writer director Parker Finn is returning, so that's always a good sign when the same creative talent is involved. this was all based on his original short horror film that I've also seen that is very effective. So the fact that this is sort of like his baby through and through also just makes me more excited. And yeah, they haven't really announced a cast of like who's returning and who's not. But I thought the cast in the first one was great. No matter what, I really like the director, as I had said. But this comes out October 18th of next year. And so, yeah, I'm just very excited because I like the original and I think it actually warrants a sequel. So there's a lot of room for it to be a good horror sequel.
Yeah, definitely a solid pick. I didn't mind Smile. It wasn't necessarily one of my favorites, and so I, you know, take a sequel or leave it, I guess is probably the best way to put it. But yeah, not that I wouldn't say I'd watch this the minute it drops, but I'm sure I'd put it on a list and then eventually get to it like 6 months later. Is probably the best way I would put about it. Um, the
It'll probably come to Paramount Plus because it was the original was supposed to come to Paramount Plus, but it did so well in its test screenings, they decided to give it a theatrical release.
Okay. Isn't the only thing I can say is, if I remember correctly, isn't that the one that stars Kira Sedgwick and Kevin Bacon's daughter, and then Kyle Gallner?
And like, yeah, it's got them, and it's got like Cal Penn, and it's got some other people.
Okay, yeah, then yeah, okay. I want to make sure I was talking. Yeah, I remember. Okay, yeah. So yeah, no, that not a bad movie by any means. Just not kind of like in that like six and a half out of 10 range for me is probably where I would put that, but definitely not a bad pick.
That's
Um,
fair.
so my number five is one that you had on your honorable mentions, and it is Argyle. Uh, I think we've talked about this before, but the Kingsman movies aren't necessarily my favorite. I really enjoy Kick-Ass. But the one thing I can say about Matthew Vaughn is, even arguably before, excuse me, all the John Wick stuff, he was like revolutionizing the way he did action sequences. I think even with the Kingsman stuff, where I'm not truly engulfed in the story, like it's not my favorite, the action sequences are just so good. And so, the trailer, I see all of these good actors. I love Sam Rockwell. I think if I was to make a list of like underrated actors, I'd probably put Rockwell on it because he's been in so much. And whenever I talk to people, they never have any idea who he is. And he's such a good actor. So that Sam, the fact that it looks like he's kind of leading it, and then of course the other list, I love John Cena, love Henry Cavill, and a bunch of the other people that are in it, and so it seems like it has the makings to be a good movie. Uh, Kind of also could bomb. I don't know, but at the very least, I'm pretty sure that, like with the majority of Matthew Vaughn's stuff, I'm at least going to enjoy the action. I'm fully expecting something along the level of the Colin Firth church scene from the first Kingsman. I feel like that to me is one of like the bar setters for action sequences, and so I'm hoping for another one of those, kind of like what they do in the second one with the whole lasso scene that I think is really good, well done. But yeah, so for the action alone, for the pure fun, I think it will excuse me, for the pure fun, I think I have this at 5, but I have a couple other movies higher that actually, no, no, no. I would probably say from 5 to 1, they're the movies that I'm going to try really hard to see in theaters. Like, I feel like Argyle should be big enough to where I can justify like needing to see it in the theater, and I will probably try my best to go in and watch it there. So I'll say from here on is like, well, no, because I'm gonna see Godzilla versus. Sorry, from 6 on, I'm gonna see it in theaters, 100% sure. Sorry, because I realized you can't not see Godzilla versus Kong 2 on, and that would be like a travesty the first time you see it to watch on like a little dinky TV at home. So I'm gonna try and see that in theaters. But anyway, yeah, Argyle.
Yeah, so like I said, it was an honorable mention. I'm not a particular Matthew Vaughn fan per se, but for all the reasons that you said are why I had it as an honorable mention. I think the action looks great because he does action so well and so creatively. I think that the comedy looks like it's gonna hit. It's just gonna be like a good fun time in theaters. Great cast. I'm also a big fan of Sam Rockwell, and I also think he's really underrated. And I'm always happy to see Henry Cavill getting work just because it seemed like he kind of fell off the face of the earth when Superman fell through. So I'm glad that he's back, and I'm in love with Dua Lipa. So everything is just adding together.
It's funny because my least favorite part of the movie is I'm not a big Bryce Dallas Howard fan, and it looks like she's literally the main character. But everybody else is, I think Bryan Cranston's the bad guy. He's always great. So yeah, it's just like you said, star-studded. I think it has the makings to be a very fun film, and I'm choosing to be optimistic.
Same here. So my number four, I'd be willing to bet is probably, also on your list moving up, but I have Saw 11 as number four. Did that make your list at all?
Oh, I totally. So, like you did with Strangers, I totally spaced that Saw 11 was coming out. And I think it's because, if I'm not mistaken, didn't it just get confirmed like a week ago?
Yeah, I'll give you that's fair. I won't ding you too hard for that.
Okay, so I'm gonna. Well, I'll have this conversation with you about Saw, and I would probably put it top five. I'll figure out whenever at the end when we do like our go through, I'll have it placed somewhere.
Sounds good. So Saw 11 just recently got announced, returning September 27th of this year. So a very quick turnaround, about almost exactly a year. So they're sort of giving it the Scream 6 treatment, for better or for worse. But Tobin Bell will be returning as Jigsaw. And literally nothing's known about the plot, but there's just plenty of theorization going around. I think with the mid-credit scene of Saw X, sort of, spoilers, skip ahead if you uh, uh, don't want Saw X spoiled, but we get Hoffman back. And so I think, the way how like Saw X sort of like antes up Amanda, sort of giving more time between her and John. I think that, sort of a natural progression with that mid-credit tease is maybe we get Hoffman back and we get a Hoffman Kramer team up movie. It is so bizarre that like Saw X worked so well for doing what this franchise should have been the whole time. It's kind of odd that they waited like 20 years to like finally make proper sequels that they should have been making the whole time in retrospect. I love the Saw franchise, but I really think Saw X really should have been Saw 2, like in retro, if you could go back in time. But yeah, so I'm just curious to see where this is going to go because Saw X was my favorite horror movie of this year, and it was a huge surprise hit. It still made it into my top 10 so far. I really only have like Aquaman 2 and Rebel Moon, so I don't think maybe Rebel Moon could, but I think my top 10 at least is pretty solid right now. So it might just stay on my top 10. So I'm just very excited. The only thing that has me not as excited is the writers of Saw X are not returning to write the script. They haven't announced who the new screenwriter is going to be or screenwriters, and they have not confirmed or denied if the same director will be returning. But we at least know Tobin Bell is returning. So the fact that, I loved the story and the script of Saw X and then those guys are not returning makes me a little hesitant. If the director does not return either, that will also be another red flag, but I feel like he might. So I'm just a little hesitant. I just feel like I need to know more. But if, the premise drops and I like it, the trailer drops and it looks solid, I think that this could definitely move up even past number four. But for right now, I'm keeping it at number four.
Yeah, so here's based off my list, I think I'm gonna slot it in at actual number five, and I moved everything down, so like Argyle six because of Con seven. So I think this kind of works in line. I'm gonna keep it at five. Um, this one's interesting because I think I've talked to this podcast before that I was extremely excited for Saw 11. Um, there was an interview done with the writers when Saw X had come out, and they basically said that they always planned to do a sequel. They wanted Saw X to further develop the backstory between Amanda and Jigsaw, and they wanted Saw 11 to then be the Hoffman Jigsaw development, kind of like what you hinted at. And they had said they were going to do that. If the writers are no longer attached, that means they're probably going to go in a different direction, which slightly upsets me because, as you know, I'm a huge fan of the Hoffman quadrilogy, and so I did want more Costas Mandalore. Also, the I forget her name, but the bad person in Saw X is confirmed to be alive. Apparently, there's a second post credit scene that I did not stay to watch, and they
Celia.
Thank you. They confirm that Celia is alive, and it sounds like she is supposed to be this sort of big bad for what is rumored to be an entire trilogy, which I think would be interesting. So be kind of like what you said, because of the unknown, I am keeping it at 5 instead of higher, even though Saw is one of my favorite franchises just in general. I still feel pretty confident putting it at 5 just because I think I also said this on the podcast before. I really feel like eventually they need to like wrap up this franchise and not touch it anymore. They're totally not going to, because as long as they can make money, they will. But I do think that this is one that they're eventually. I personally think all of the movies are great in their own right. I feel like eventually they're gonna put out a dud in my own eyes, and so I don't really want that to happen because it'll diminish the actual franchise for me. And maybe that's 11, I don't know. It just was so weird to me when you told me they were dropping the writers, especially cuz I feel like most people raved so much about the story of Saw X. Like the story was what got everybody
Exactly.
to really like it.
Yeah, exactly.
So did you have that at number 4?
Yes, that is my number 4.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and go with my number 4, and this one came completely out of nowhere. I believe this trailer dropped like a week and a half to 2 weeks ago. Um, that I had no idea what this movie was, and after doing more research into it, I was almost immediately on board. So this is Civil War. No, this is not the Marvel Civil War. It's in no relation to the comics. Essentially, the it's takes place in current day, and it follows Kirsten Dunst, who's like a wartime photographer reporter lady, and she's going around and they're meeting people, and it has a lot of really good cast. So like Nick Offerman, Stephen McKinley Henderson, Jesse Plemons, uh, names that maybe you don't necessarily know, but they are good actors. And that the premise of the story is that a civil war is actually happening in the US in like modern times. And so I'm sure it's going to play with a lot of present day themes. And I know this may sound out of character for a list made by me, but I really enjoy movies that go like deep into philosophy, especially if, and I'm not going to say this would count as historical fiction, but like, especially if they are taking stuff that could happen and then say, well, maybe. So like I don't know, the just the idea and the premise, the trailer really got me. Like I watched it a couple times. It really made me almost fully engulfed in the story before I've even seen it. And I'm really curious to know where they go with it, because I feel like you could go in a million different directions, especially let's see here. It's written and directed by Alex Garland. I don't necessarily know anything about him. Looking here, it looks like he did 28 Days Later. Uh, so it looks like he wrote 28 Days Later. He did not direct it. He also wrote Dread. So yeah, okay. So he's at least done a couple things. It looks like his most recent thing with that movie Men, which I did not see, but I remember seeing the trailer for it. Anyway, I this one's kind of like out of the box for me for something I would normally see, but the pure premise of what would happen if a civil war took place in current day US is just very interesting to me, and I'm hoping that it raises as many questions as I think it will. Of course they'll attempt to answer some stuff, but that's depending upon who makes the movie, they're going to put their own opinion in it, which is perfectly fine. I just like the idea of the thought-provoking questions that could come from this, and so it seems like it would be really interesting, and I like the cast. So I'm this one was the random one that hit me like a week and a half ago that I didn't even expect to be a thing, but it comes out right around my birthday, and so this will probably be my birthday movie. But yeah, it looks really good, and my number 4 is Civil War.
Yeah, I don't know. I This trailer really didn't do much for me. It also kind of came out of nowhere. It sort of took the internet by storm. Like as soon as it dropped, everyone was talking about it, whereas no one knew it existed before. Um, Alex Garland does have a nice writing history, like you pointed out, 28 Days Later and Dread 2012, which are two solid films. I'm a huge fan of Ex Machina. which that was his directorial debut. I thought that was great. I did not see his two follow-up films. I didn't see Annihilation and I didn't see Men. I heard increasingly bad things about both of them. Most people that I've talked to said Annihilation was very meh, and then most people I know thought that Men was awful. So
I did hear that.
that doesn't really necessarily excite me. And I don't know, this trailer just I just wasn't I guess I just had the opposite experience. I thought it was kinda cheesy. It looked a little it just looked a little cringy. And I'm not trying to get, like, political or anything because that's not the purpose of this channel, but Alex Garland has a very public political stance, and he is also British, and that's
Oh
relevant
no.
because the trailer knowing that and then watching the trailer, it looks like someone who is not an American
Is that why
trying
Texas and
to
California are on the same side?
yeah, people are like, if literally anyone knew anything about America, you would know that that would not be the case. Now, maybe it works out. Maybe that's intentional. Maybe there's something that we don't know. That's very possible. I'm not discounting it, but just knowing what I know about him, how he's very upfront about his politics, and he's also British as a non-American. Watching this trailer, it looked like a non-American trying to comment on American politics while knowing nothing about American politics. And so that sort of detracted a lot from me, and I had to shake that bias out of my head. But like you said, it's got a great cast. I love Jesse Plemons. He's becoming one of my favorite actors, and he's great. Great to see Kirsten Dunst back. Nick Offerman's great. So I'm still very much going to see it, but I can definitely tell this is going to be one of those movies where you probably don't even want to bother talking about it when it comes out because the discourse is probably going to be unbearable.
Yeah, I definitely from the stuff you just said, I'm a little more hesitant now. I feel like I shouldn't have put it at 4. I knew nothing about Alex Garland going into this. And
I
I
mean,
can
who knows? It could
take
be good.
I can take implications from what you're saying even though you're not saying it.
Yes, and I think if you know that and you watch the trailer, you can see that.
Okay. Okay. So,
But
we'll
yeah,
we'll leave Civil War as a soft 4, potentially could be moved down a bit.
sounds good. I mean, I'm not telling you to change your list. I'm just saying that I did not like the trailer.
Yeah, the only thing that was throwing me off was the Texas and California thing, but now that you've said that he's not from America, that makes a hell of a lot more sense because I feel like if you're not from here, you pretty much only know like Texas, California, Florida, New York, and that's about it.
Exactly. Um, okay. So my number 3 is a movie that has been in development for a while, but we just recently it only just recently got a release date and only recently got solid footing. I am going with Wolfman, which is the new Lee Winnell um, Universal monster movie for Blumhouse. If you've seen my favorite horror movies of every year, video, the video that we did, Lee Winnell is not only one of my favorite, working writer directors right now, one of my favorite horror writer directors right now, but Invisible Man was my favorite A, horror movie, but B, movie in 2020, which I guess wasn't saying much, but I was a huge fan of that movie. I thought he just brought a really new and creative and original take to a classic Universal movie monster. And so he is returning to do that again with the Wolfman in this movie. And that has me very excited, very excited for Lee Winnell to come on board. He was attached to the project and then he left, and the project kind of stalled for a little bit and there wasn't really much progress. And then they just now announced that he is actually back in the director's chair after having written the script. So very happy about that. Unfortunately, it was supposed to star Ryan Gosling, which, as we've talked about earlier, we're big fans of, but he has since dropped out. And Christopher Abbott, who I wasn't too familiar with, but I did watch Possessor this year, from director Brandon Cronenberg, and he was the star of that movie, and he was quite good in that, and that's my real exposure with him. And I thought he was great. So, I think that he's going to be just as good of a lead. We don't know too much about the movie, but sort of in the same vein as The Invisible Man, this movie takes the premise of the classic Universal monster, the Wolfman, sets it in the present day in Los Angeles in an urban environment, in the modern day. Um, and all that we really know is that a lot of inspiration was taken from Nightcrawler with Jake Gyllenhaal, one of my favorite movies. That came out in 2014. That's this like really dark, gritty, sort of urban thriller, very high adrenaline. And so the fact that this is inspired by Nightcrawler, Lee Winnell's returning, it's a new, fresh, original take on werewolf mythology. Like I said with Nosferatu, werewolves are one of those subgenres that I feel like got got you know messed up from Twilight, and it's been sort of hasn't recovered since. So hopefully movies like this will help recover and make werewolves scary again. So yeah, so I'm going with what, and I just because I'm a huge stickler for like exact names for movies. This is just called Wolfman. It's not the Wolfman, just Wolfman. So I just wanted to put that out there. But yeah, so that is my number three.
Okay, interesting. Uh, this one I was much more excited for, coming off the tails of Invisible Man, and when Ryan Gosling was attached. I'm going to just kind of toss it up to, I don't want to say fatigue, but it's just kind of been a while. Not that it's too late to do. I may even like this movie, but that's kind of why I didn't put it on the list. I wasn't necessarily as interested now as I was. What was Invisible Man 2018?
It was 2020.
Oh wow. All right. I'm off by a lot. Anyway, dang, the pandemic really took some time off. But yeah, no, that'd be my only real, like, I don't know. It'll probably I don't have much to say. I'm with you. I think if I understood what you said, I personally prefer werewolves over vampires, and I think there should be more werewolf stuff. So I'm always down for more wolf stuff, and I will probably see this movie, but it's not necessarily one of my most anticipated.
That is fair enough. And this comes out on October 25th. So
Uh,
probably be my Halloween time movie.
yeah, it's a nice little Halloween movie. I like it. So my number three, I'm pretty sure is not on your list if it hasn't been said already, because I don't think you're as big of a fan of this as I was, and that is Deadpool 3. Um, the I loved Deadpool 1, excuse me. I love Deadpool 2. Deadpool is one of my favorite comic characters. I just am excited for more. The reason why I don't have this as high as I maybe would have in the past is because of what we mentioned earlier, where I'm still hesitant on Disney doing it. Like, I know they finally announced they were giving it an R rating, which I think is a huge plus because I was so afraid they were going to do PG-13. But um, even with that being said, I just, we haven't seen the proof yet. I need to actually witness it to see if it's good. I'm hoping for the best. I think the addition of Hugh Jackman should be awesome. However, I've heard rumors that he's going to be in it for like 2 minutes and is purely just a marketing ploy, which I would really hate. But would not put past Disney to do. If I'm not mistaken, there's been some other stuff that like Jennifer Garner's going to be in it as Elektra, and maybe we're going to see Daredevil and like the different when he's like hopping back and forth, which I think is the synopsis or something. We're going to be seeing all of like maybe like Nicolas Cage, Ghost Rider, and stuff like that, which I think will be cool. I'm hoping the entire movie isn't just like trying to do fan fodder. Like, I'm hoping there is a real story. I don't know. This one is like the biggest boomer bust for me because I want to put the bar at an 11, but I'm trying to tamper my expectations because I just don't trust Disney at this point. And so I'm really hoping for the best, but I'm also fully prepared to be let down. Number three, Deadpool 3.
So funnily enough, my number two, Deadpool 3.
Really? I am surprised because didn't you not like the sequel?
I did not. So I am a huge fan of the first one. It's in my like top five Fox X-Men movies. It wouldn't quite be a top 10 comic book movie for me, but probably like a top 20, top 15 overall comic book movie for sure. The second one I really was not a big fan of, but I also haven't seen it since theaters. I just remember not liking it at all when I saw it in theaters, but I plan on rewatching all the Fox X-Men movies before Deadpool 3. It is the only movie in 2024, which makes it kind of interesting. But yeah, really, I put it at number two just for the morbid curiosity. Just curious what it's going to be because this is really our first interaction between, we have confirmed that this is in the MCU. We have confirmed that this is the same Ryan Reynolds Deadpool from the previous Fox movies. We've confirmed that real Fox characters are returning, like Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. So this is really our first foray into introducing X-Men and the Fox characters into the MCU. So I'm just really curious what that's going to look like and just all the cameo. I'm really going into this, I'll be completely honest. Like I've given up faith on most of the MCU to be honest from like a story standpoint. I really just want this just for the cameos to be honest. Like I know that that's exactly the opposite of what you said, but I
No, that's
just
fair.
think it can be really funny to just see, all the Fox characters, like see Ben Affleck as Daredevil for 2 seconds, see Jennifer Garner as Elektra for 2 seconds, see the Tim Story Fantastic Four where Chris Evans is Human Torch again. You know, if they could get the Fant Four Stick cast, that would be hilarious, but I don't know if they'd want to like subject themselves to that. But there's even rumors now. This is just the rumor mill, so it's like who knows if it's true or not. Some people were even saying that like Predator is going to be in it because that's a Fox property. Like they're just going to have Fox properties just show
Space
up.
Jam, but in Deadpool.
And if it's even half of that, I mean, I know, the biggest problem right now is you have all these rumors and people get a bigger idea and they judge the movie unfairly because they had this idea of what it should have been. And I'm guilty of that. But for this, I feel like it's the one that could actually deliver. But yeah, more or less, cameos aside, I'm just curious how this interfacing between introducing the Fox X-Men movies into the mainstream MCU is going to work because like I said, they are confirming like Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool is joining the mainstream MCU. So not only is he interacting with like Hugh Jackman as Wolverine and potentially other legacy X-Men characters, eventually he will be on screen with like Sam Wilson, Captain America, Doctor Strange, Tom Holland, Peter Parker, in a Kang Dynasty or a Secret Wars in the future. So like just seeing what that's going to look like just has me so curious. But yeah, so that's why I put that on my number two.
No, that's completely fair. Um the I think we can all agree the best part of No Way Home was when Garfield and Maguire showed up. So like I get it. I don't think you have the same appreciation for the X-Men movies as I do just because I grew up on them. So seeing all the people back will be really cool to me. I also, if it is true, I really like the Ben Affleck Daredevil movie. I know that's a hot take. I like the Nicolas Cage Ghost Rider. So like all of that stuff, if that does happen, that would be cool. So it's not like I don't want the cameos. I just also hope there is a real story. For me personally, while I love the ending fight scene of Endgame, the majority of the movie is kind of just fan fodder where they do a bunch of Easter eggs and I mean, like it was designed to be fan service, so like that's fine. But to me, it wasn't as much. So I don't rewatch that movie. I would like to be able to rewatch Deadpool 3. I guess is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, that's totally fair. So, and this also just being the only MCU movie in 2024. And, with all the stuff happening now where they're like rearranging stuff and, are they still doing Kang? What is Secret Wars? Is that still happening? Just I feel like this is one of those like tent pole movies moving forward that will like establish a firm path and move forward. So that just also has me very curious.
Yeah, that is completely fair. So if that's your number two, I should do number two.
Yes, go for it.
Okay, so my number two is probably going to come out of the blue for you, but it is Kung Fu Panda 4. Now, as you know, I am a huge animated movie person. I fully stand by that quote unquote kids' movies can still be good for adults. As you know, I herald Boss Baby as one of those. But the Kung Fu Panda trilogy is also one. I realized how much I really just love the DreamWorks stuff. But anyway, the fourth movie is coming really late, don't get me wrong. Like this could absolutely bomb, but I love the original trilogy. I've watched the entire TV show. I know they just did a new one. That one I have not watched, but maybe. Anyway, the trailer looks awesome. I know a lot of people were kind of complaining that this new villain kind of has the same power as the old villain, but I personally think they're different enough, and I think the story is going to be different enough because of where it says it's setting up Poe in. And also, in the trailer, the the original five are not in it, but from what I can gather, they will be in the movie. So like that would have been huge if they weren't able to get Angelina Jolie and Jackie Chan and all the actors to come back, that would have been really really bad. But it looks like they did, and so we should be good. And so the uh, the Furious Five will at least be in it. There's a good chance they're not going to have a major role because of like I said, the setup of where they're putting Poe. But like they have to at least be in it. I don't know. I think my little kid brain is choosing to be really happy at this, but I have a feeling it's not going to live up to my expectations. This is one where I don't know if I can truly lower the bar, but there's probably no way it can reach the bar. Is the best way I can put it.
Yeah, so I think I've said this before on the podcast. I'm not a huge animation person. Even as a kid, I didn't really watch a lot of animated movies. It's just not like an art medium I gravitated towards. Um, I've seen the first two Kung Fu Pandas. I believe I saw them both in theaters when they came out. So I was like, whatever, like 8 or 9 when the first one came out, and I was like 10 or 11 when the second one came out. I don't think I even have rewatched them since seeing them in theaters as a kid. So I honestly really don't remember them that well. I remember liking them a good bit, but never rewatching them. I never saw Kung Fu Panda 3, never watched the shows. But I've seen a lot of good buzz about this fourth one. So I didn't watch the trailer because, like I said, as you can infer, I wasn't really excited for it. It wasn't really on my radar. I hadn't seen the third one, so I didn't bother seeing the fourth one. Um, but I've heard a lot of good buzz about the trailer. A lot of people saying it sounds good, similar things like you've said. And people saying that it's like the most underrated, like quote unquote kids movie franchises out there. And so I'm kind of morbidly curious. I know I've been saying that a lot, but I'm just a very morbidly curious person. Um, so yeah, maybe I'll check out the three and then check this one out in theaters, because of all the good buzz that I've heard around it, but can't really say much specifically just because I've only seen those first two and it's been about whatever 10, 15 years since one and two for me. So those are sort of my
It's
thoughts on Kung Fu Panda.
So that is all perfectly fair. One more thing to add because I think this is hilarious. So the person who's directing it is Mike Mitchell, who I feel like is well known for making really bad sequels. Lego Movie 2, SpongeBob Sponge Out of Water, Alvin and the Chipmunks Chipwrecked, Shrek Forever After. Now he did do Sky High, he did do Trolls, and for some reason his first thing was Deuce Bigelow Male Gigolo, which I think is hilarious. But and now that I'm seeing his track record, that may also not be the greatest of indicators. But anyway, still have high hopes for it. I will definitely be watching it.
Every movie you listed except for Sky High is really trash. I don't even like Troll. I saw Trolls once and I did, but granted, I was like 17, so I was not the target audience. But
Yeah, it's perfectly
yeah,
fair.
ev- every movie but Sky High you listed, I do not like.
I agree. Shrek Forever After is my least favorite Shrek. I won't even watch it anymore. I just do not like it.
Yeah. Um, okay. So my number one probably could be guessed if someone looked hard at a list of movies coming out next year. Um, and just knowing me and what I've said on this podcast, but no surprise, my number one is Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. So I've said this many times before, Planet of the Apes, the original, is probably my favorite movie of all time. And the whole franchise is one of my favorite movie franchises of all time. And so I am a huge fan, particularly of this most recent. reboot prequel trilogy with Rise, Dawn, and War for the Planet of the Apes. And we will be returning to that universe just a couple centuries later. So, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes comes out next year, May 24th. It is a Memorial Day weekend release. We just got new confirmation a couple days ago, actually, about some plot details that this takes place 300 years after the events of the prequel reboot trilogy. And basically, ape society has taken off, human society has regressed. So we're getting closer to the world of that original movie. And the apes have sort of divided off into different, like, sort of factions and kingdoms. And in this time, basically, the apes have forgotten about A, Caesar, but B, the history. So, sort of to them, they think humans have always been like that and apes have always been like they are. And they've forgotten that, humans were once on top and the world went topsy turvy. So, we're following a young chimpanzee that is sort of on this journey of self-discovery to figuring out that the world that he grew up in really is not the true world and true history of things. So probably some more specific details in there with, like, the actual antagonist and stuff. But in general, that's sort of the setup. This is intended to start a new trilogy, be the first in a new trilogy, and being directed by Wes Ball, who historically his only directing credits are the Maze Runner trilogy, which I have not seen or read anything Maze Runner. I've heard the first one is decent, and then the other two are kind of so-so. So that being his only directing credits and then directing this makes me, slightly hesitant because I'm not familiar with his work enough to really be excited. I wish Matt Reeves was taking a bigger role in this. I think he might be a producer, but I might be wrong on that. But the fact that he's not in the director's chair because he did such a Dawn and War makes me a little bit disappointed. But I just think, I love this universe. I love this lore. I think that the trailer looked great. It's actually one of my favorite trailers, probably, that's come out this year. I think the apes look great. It looks like they're keeping that quality, they're keeping those standards. Um, and yeah, I'm just always looking for more Apes universe, especially when the quality looks this good. So I have faith. Like I said, I'm not too familiar with West Ball, but I think the trailers look great. I think the plot they're going with seems great, where it's like, you know clearly Planet of the Apes, but it looks like they're taking a new original story sort of direction for it. So it seems like the natural progression to go. And so, yeah, this is, very clearly, I would say, my number one in terms of this one. I knew was going to be my number one before I even started, and then everything else just filled in the rest of the slots. So, yeah, my number one, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
Ironically, for my list, the one I have at number one also was immediately number one, and then everything else filled in, so that's kind of funny. Um, as far as this one goes, I think I've mentioned before, I really liked Rise, and then the two after didn't really appeal to me, but I was in my era of not liking those kinds of movies, so I know I really need to rewatch these. With that said, going off of what you said with the director, so there are not many books that I have read, but Maze Runner is one of them, and the very first Maze Runner is awesome. It's like low-key one of my favorite movies that I just haven't rewatched a lot. And then both sequels, in my opinion, just completely lowered the bar. Like, it got worse with each one. I was extremely upset because they had so much they could have worked with. The books are so awesome, and to me, it just goes completely downhill after the first one. So that's my 2 cents on that. If that changes anything for you, I doubt it. But that's really all I can add to the conversation as far as the Planet of the Apes stuff is concerned.
Yeah, I'm just gonna give him credit, until proven otherwise, because I've seen a lot of discourse about it where people are pointing out, like, oh, well, this director that's beloved now, he directed a bunch of poorly received movies, and then he directed the one that everyone loves him for, and now he makes great movies. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt until I'm proven wrong. If I'm proven wrong. Obviously, I hope I'm not. But
There you go.
um, can I guess your number one?
Yeah.
Is it Beverly Hills Cop 4?
Oh my god! How did I not put that one on here? Hold on.
Was
Hold
that
on.
not on your list?
No. God dang it.
We
Hold on. That
we both were slipping.
Well, what sucks is, and this was kind of my fault for the way that I did this. I only tried to put ones on that either I knew existed or had trailers that I saw, and I made this list way too long ago and then did not come back to update it. Oh my God.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's fair.
So I have to give you my actual number two and then my actual number one. I promise I'll be quick because my
Okay.
God, how could I not have that one on here? You
Well,
would be correct in this new list.
okay. Yeah. I mean, you're right. This came out like this week, so I give you some slack.
Ooh, that one's bad on me. Okay. Well, the one that was previously at number one but has now been deranked is the Beekeeper. Just real quick on this one, kind of like I've been saying, this one's the most perfect mashup I could possibly think of. Did not know this movie existed till I saw the trailer. Love David Ayer. He pretty much puts out nothing but bangers. And then I honestly didn't really grow up liking Jason Statham, but in his later years, I've really grown to like him as an actor, at least the type of action that he does. I keep rewatching Wrath of Man and like it more and more every day. It's slowly rising up my favorite movie list. And so I'm just excited for this one. It's my most anticipated action of the year. As far as that type of stuff goes, David Ayer, though he's not known as like the John Wick style of person, he's always very gritty. He has that realistic aspect to him and the type of stuff that he makes. Jason Statham likes to do his own stunts. He's just a good screen presence. Jeremy Irons is always a good villain, so I just really have high hopes for this movie. That's really about it. But I just, of all of the movie trailers that I had seen, this one was number one. Now it's number two. As far as like really, my thing is action and horror with a sprinkle of comedy and drama mixed in. And so, generally speaking, especially when it comes to movies I'm seeing in theaters, those action movies take the top for me. And this is like the blockbuster that I'm going to be butt in seat like opening night. And you know me, I like never go to opening night stuff. I always wait till the matinee, but I'm really excited to see this one. So that's my number two. Any comments before I move on to the number one that you definitely don't know what it is?
I mean, yeah, the trailer for this actually looked, like it's a good time, just like a David Ayer turn your brain off action revenge thriller. Um, I didn't know that this was coming out until it played before. I think it actually played before Thanksgiving for me for the movie Thanksgiving in theaters, and I had never heard of it. It wasn't on my radar at all, and it played before that movie, and I thought it looked pretty decent. So, also another movie that comes out in a couple weeks. I believe it's like January 12th, so like the second week of January.
Yeah,
Um,
that
yeah,
one's
no, it looks
definitely.
fine. I learned the other day that my girlfriend is a big Jason movie fan. I did not know
Ah.
that until recently. So, she actually one of these weird cases where I think she knew about this movie before I even did, which like never happens. So maybe we will be seeing this. But yeah, that is a solid pick. Not what I would have expected for your number one, which I also don't know what it is.
Well, the shock for everyone, my number one is Beverly Hills Cop 4. Hold on, real quick. Can you hear this?
I can hear you if that's what you mean. Are you playing something
Okay.
else?
All right, never mind. I was gonna have the theme play in the background while I spoke. Very anticlimactic. I could have had this prepared. Anyway, very first podcast we ever did, I went on a huge rant about this. The Beverly Hills Cop movies are some of my favorite movies of all time. This is like the most popular yet underrated 80s action movies because the amount of popularity it had when it came out was insane and completely rivals any of the other 80s movies. However, it just did not hold true as far as the young generation. Like if my dad had never shown these to me, I would not have known the greatness that was Axel Foley. But it's insane when you go back and look at all of the records it broke. So it's just weird to me that it didn't really hold over. But anyway, Beverly Hills Cop 4 has been in development hell literally for like 2 decades. Eddie Murphy has been trying to develop this. Beverly Hills Cop 3 famously flopped. and there was a lot that was wrong with it. He even said it was rushed. There was a lot of um, um, messing with from production companies and whatnot. So it wasn't his best work. He regrets it. He wishes he never made it. So he did not want to make the fourth one until he knew he had a good story, which gives me hope. Because generally speaking, I have faith in Eddie Murphy. I like a lot of the stuff that he does. Of course, he had that acting hiatus where he kind of just went to do his own thing. But ever since he's been back, I've been waiting for this to come. We finally got the trailer this week. I think I told you the minute I watched it, there is just something about hearing the theme. Like it starts like a normal trailer. You just see some action happen. Then all of a sudden you just hear the little couple of notes, and then Axel Foley appears from behind the car, and I got immediate goosebumps. The best part is, so in Beverly Hills Cop 3, one of the reasons why it was really bad is that they did not get John Ashton back to play Taggart, and Judge Reinhold takes a back seat. Two of the best characters in the first two movies are Reinhold and Ashton, and they are the absolute, I don't know if foil's the right word, but they are the buddy cop aspect with Eddie Murphy's character, and their on-screen presence is so good that the end of the trailer showing them both coming back was what solidified it for me. Like, I was really worried. Originally, it was just pitched as Joseph Gordon-Levitt is like the rookie cop who's learning from the grizzled vet Eddie Murphy, and I was like, okay, cool. I like Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I like Eddie Murphy. I'm probably gonna like the movie. But knowing that they were able to get back the different characters was just a really good thing to me. The one that has not been confirmed is Ronnie Cox is the other major character. Now he's 85, so if he is in the movie, I doubt he has a big role, but he's another guy who I feel like really needs to be in the movie because of how big his character was in the original. Like, he's a background character in 1 and 2, and because they weren't able to get a lot of a lot of the actors for the third movie, he literally becomes like the right hand man in that third movie, which is fine, but it's definitely not as good as the first two. Anyway, I'm really excited for this one. I immediately sent it to my dad. He was hype. We already have it on the calendar that we blocked off the day to watch this movie. I can't believe I left this off the list. I didn't even think about adding it when the trailer dropped. But yeah, this one has me super excited. I just hope that it's as funny as the stuff in the past. Of course, when you are dealing with comedies that were famous in the era when comedy could be more free, you always wonder about how it would do in today's world. Like as an example with Rush Hour 4, Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker both confirmed that they're not going to pull any punches. It'll be just like the movie came out in the early 2000s. So I'm hoping for the best that this one doesn't, do the do. And so anyway, my number one is Beverly Hills Cop 4. I still can't believe that I did not put that on the list.
Yeah, so as I had mentioned in that first episode we had where you first mentioned the original Beverly Hills Cop, I have not seen any of these movies. I'm not familiar with them at all. I would like to remedy that, especially with this new one coming. Kind of gives me an excuse for me to do that. But almost universally, from what I've seen, is that most people were thinking like, oh, this is another legacy sequel, this, that, Eddie Murphy hasn't made many good movies lately, and, they were just not excited, but then the trailer, like, immediately won them over. That seems to be, like, the general, consensus. Like, yeah, people were like, "Oh, I wasn't excited for this at all," and then I watched the trailer and the theme song played, and I saw all the characters back, and this one looks different. Like, this one looks like it'll work. So I'm happy that that's the reaction. I'm not going to have like the personal ties to this franchise as like you would because I'd be watching it for the first time, but I definitely want to watch these movies in order to see and experience this new one. So can't say
uh,
too much about it specifically, but I figured that was going to be your number one the whole time. So
Two things off of that. One, totally forgot to mention, Kevin Bacon's in it. I think he's going to end up being the bad guy. He's a great bad guy. I really do like Kevin Bacon. I think he, like Beauty Shop, R.I.P.D., X-Men First Class. Like, I think he does a good bad guy. So I hope he does end up being the bad guy because I think he'd be a good job. And then secondly, I wouldn't think it would be too far off to say that Beverly Hills Cop 4 would be the equivalent for me as you are with Planet of the Apes. Whereas I love this franchise so much, I just never assumed they'd actually make the fourth movie. So I would be, I think, of course, this is off the top of my head, I think this would be the closest I would get to having that like Die Hard franchise that I'm super excited they're doing a sequel for, and potentially it could be rebooted for more like a trilogy or whatever, kind of like they're doing with Planet of the Apes. So that I think that this could be a very good year for the both of us. um,
So, run it. Do you want to just run back through just 10 to 1?
yep, because my list changed a lot, so we're gonna we're gonna run back
Okay.
through 10 to 1.
All right. I will go first if you
That
don't
works.
mind.
Yep.
Okay. So for me, recap number 10, Alien Romulus. Number 9, The Watchers. Number 8, Night Swim. Number 7, Nosferatu. Number 6, Godzilla X Kong, The New Empire. Number 5, Smile 2. Number 4, Saw 11. Number 3, Wolfman. Number 2, Deadpool 3. And number 1, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
All right. And my new and improved list: number 10, Borderlands; number 9, The Strangers Trilogy; number 8, Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire; number 7, Civil War; number 6, Argyle; number 5, Saw 11; number 4, Deadpool 3; number 3, Kung Fu Panda 4; number 2, The Beekeeper; and then number 1, Beverly Hills Cop 4.
Yeah. 2024, I'm excited.
Same here.